Welcome everybody to another episode with the D365 FO Dude. I'm your host, Brendan Linsmeyer, and today we're going to take a look at location layouts using the Location Setup Wizard. In front of me, I'm looking at an Excel sheet of a distribution warehouse location layout. As you can see, I have aisles 1 through 12. Each aisle has racks 1 through 10. I've color-coded them into zones 1 through 6. If we take a look at the shelf bin layout, I have shelves 1 through 4 in each rack, and I have segregated, this is also a zone, shelves 2 through 4 as the bulk zone, the bottom shelf being the pick zone, and each shelf has bin 1 and 2. So I want to put these into D365. I'm starting from scratch, and I want to utilize one of the tools that's available, which is the Location Setup Wizard. So how do we do this? First, let's take a look at what it's supposed to look like. So what I've done ahead of this video is made zones 1 through 5. And as you can see, I have my profiles, my zone IDs, and my additional zones all within this warehouse already, right? So I quickly want to add a 6th zone, and I'll do that using the Location Setup Wizard. So what this setup wizard prompts you to use is the basic definition of a location, right? So I need to define the warehouse and the location profile, which defines the inventory behavior inside that location. According to my Excel sheet, I'm going to have an additional aisle 11 and 12 for zone 6, and I have broken them out into a bulk and pick shelves within the racking. So first I'm going to make that pick location for the aisle. My zone ID is now going to become zone 6. In my additional zone here, because I'm breaking out pick and bulk, I like to do it with a zone as well, not just the location profile. I'm going to tag it with the pick zone. And then I define the starting and ending values that I want to create values for. So for the aisles, I'm going to do 11 to 12. The racks are going to be 1 through 10. Now in this instance, because I have all my pick locations on the bottom shelf, I'm actually going to use not a range, but a static text of 1. That's just going to create 1 for that shelf part of the format. And then I'm going to do my bins 1 through 2, and I'll run this. And you can see that I have success messages here. And again, it's creating those locations for that zone. And you can see that the 1 in that third segment there, that's the shelf segment. It's just fixed at 1. So now if I look at my zone ID of zone 6, that's exactly what I was looking for, right? So to do the second part, the bulk locations, what's the shelves 2 through 4? I'll run this again. And I'll just change my profile. My additional zone. And my zone ID again is all going to be in zone 6, which is still aisle 1 through or 11 to 12. Same number of racks in those aisles. Instead of the static text, I'm going to do 2 through 4. And again, bin positions 1 and 2. So now if we look at the success messages, I have a greater number of locations created, right? Because I have 3 shelf levels that I'm creating for. And you can see it segment 4 to 3, and as it goes down, it goes to 2, right? So if I look in zone 6, and now I look in the bulk zone, we'll see all those locations created for aisles 11 and 12, thus giving us our full complete zone 6 inner warehouse. All right. Let's talk about a little bit of the precursor setups that I needed to use for this. So let's just briefly take a look at the location setup wizard prompts again. So beyond the warehouse, I need to define location profile. And if I'm using zones, any number of zones, I can define that when I'm using this wizard. Um, let's take a look at inside the location profile itself. And we'll take a look at, let's use bulk LP, which is what I used for my bulk locations. You'll notice that there's a location format setting, and it is mandatory. If I were to create a location profile again, you see how it's mandatory here? The mandatory setting is such that I can use it in the location setup wizard. And what it does is it defines the segments of that location, right? So if I were to go back into that location setup wizard and select the bulk LP location profile, it knows that the format or the segments of that location should follow this definition, right? And what this is saying is I have an aisle, rack, shelf, bin. Each one is separated by a dash, and I'm defining the length or the number of characters per segment, okay? So let's just briefly take a look back at that. I'll go back to my warehouse and go to bulk LP. And right there, it's pulling the location format of my location profile. Additionally, I like to use zones because I'm a big fan of zone picking when it comes to distribution. So I wanted to tag my zones with a zone ID, and then we have additional zones 1 through 3. I typically use the primary zone ID as either a spatial grouping or by product line. And then the additional zones 1 through 3, I typically use the first zone to classify it as a bulk or a pick location. And of course, whether it's license plate controlled or not, that's defined by the location profile itself. So location setup wizard is great, especially if you're creating something from scratch. If you're running a modeling session for implementation and you don't have the client's data already, it's really easy just to set up a warehouse on the fly, and it only takes a matter of minutes. Thanks for listening, and tune in for more. Thank you.